What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna work on the cylinder itself. We're gonna prep it to reinstall it and make a little bit more power. Not extreme, but I'm gonna tell you how to get more extreme power out of your cylinder. We're gonna just clean it up, get it ready to reinstall, resurface the two parts right here so we have a good connection. So we have a complete sealed off combustion chamber, so we don't have any leaks. Also, we're gonna work on the exhaust port. The exhaust port is really dirty. There is a lot of carbon buildup in there. We're gonna try to clean it up as best as we can. Also, we're gonna work on this part where the cylinder meets the crankcase. So we also have a sealed engine. That is all gonna be important. And there's a little bit of work on the ports right here that I need to do. It's gonna be fun, but let's just get started and I'm gonna show you everything that I'm gonna do and then we can go over to the time lapse. So here we are. This is where I'm gonna do all my work. And let's first start with the cylinder head. Now, there's not a lot of stuff we can do on this, but there's still some stuff that we can improve on. I'm talking about the decombustion chamber. As you can see, it's pretty smooth, it's cleaned up, but I wanted to get it even more smoother. The problem with this bike was carbon buildup on this surface right here, on the piston, and also at the exhaust port we see that. So we want to minimize that. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna smooth this part out right here. Carbon builds up on small little grooves where it can attach itself. The whole process is that the fuel mixture cleans out the combustion chamber, but if you have a lot of pitting, this used to be very rough, but it is a little bit smoother right now, as you can see. But we're gonna smooth it up even a little more so we don't have that carbon buildup and we have a clean combustion chamber. Also, what we're gonna do, we're gonna surface this face right here. I'm talking where the gasket is, and also on the bottom cylinder we're gonna do that. Make it all nice and flat. There was some gasket left over, but we're gonna clean it up. It's gonna be a mirror, kind of not really a mirror finish, but it's gonna be very smooth. You're gonna see it. While we're doing that, we're gonna clean up this exhaust port. It looks really dirty right now. It's not that important that it's totally clean, but I want it clean. Next up, as you can see, this face right here of the exhaust gasket is a little bit dirty. This means we have a leakage right here. The only sealing part was right here. So we're gonna clean that up as well. With the same method that we use on this face right here. Clean it up so we have a nice even surface to mount a new exhaust on there. Even clean out the inside. The bottom part looks pretty nice because I already did some work on that. There was a lot of gaskets left on there, but I cleaned it up and I started smoothing it out so we have a nice connecting piece to the crankcase. For ports, we're not gonna do a port job on this. The reason because this is the stock cylinder and it has pretty big ports right now. I mean, port matching to a stock cylinder is not that, useful. It could be useful, but there's still a lot of debate. Does it really work? Does it doesn't? So we're not gonna bother with that. Maybe if we switch over to a bigger cc cylinder, a 70 or an 80 or whatever that is available, we are certainly gonna do a port job on that. But for now, with the stock cylinder, it's not that necessary. But I'm gonna have to clean up one port. As you see, the two on these sides looks pretty nice. But on the underside there is a little bit of burrs right here, so I'm gonna remove that so we have a nice clean port. Just get a file to it and make it all nice and pretty. So that should be it for the cylinder kit. It's still a little bit dirty around here, but I'm not gonna bother with that. When the bike heats up, it's gonna clean off of there and then we can work it on a little bit because the cylinder head is a little bit tricky to clean with all the fins and all that. Let's just get started. First thing that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try to clean out the exhaust port and then we can go on with that. So let's have some fun. So the exhaust port is totally clean right now. I mean, there's still some black spots in there, but it's good enough. I'm not gonna polish the exhaust port. That is not necessary. As I told before, I'm not gonna do a ton of work on this cylinder. Now, the reason that you would polish the exhaust port is for carbon buildup and for the flow of the exhaust. A smoother surface, the exhaust gases will flow easier and carbon buildup will not occur that much. Now, you can only do this with the exhaust port. Don't think you can do this with the intake port. A intake needs to be roughened up to create small little turbulence to make the fuel mixture mix better. But with the exhaust ports, it doesn't really matter. You can polish it to a mirror finish. It just takes time. Is it worth polishing the exhaust port? I don't really know. It's just something that you can do, and for reducing carbon buildup, it is a nice thing. Now, it's hard to get a close-up shot with the camera of this exhaust port, so I'm gonna post a picture right here. This is what it looks like. It looks pretty clean. I posted this picture on my Instagram, so if you want to see it before the video comes out or you want to see other stuff, follow me on Instagram. Now, with this exhaust port, even with polishing, there's still a lot of stuff that you can do. And let me get you guys a close-up shot of this exhaust port, and I will explain to you that way. So here's the exhaust port. As you can see right here, there is a nick right here, but here comes a copper gasket. This exhaust port is sealed two ways, one with a copper gasket sitting in this outer ring right here, and then a normal exhaust gasket right here. Now, as you can see, there is a lot of black stuff right here. When we removed the exhaust, there wasn't a copper gasket right here, so you can see how important it is to get those two. Now, I already have this copper gasket. I ordered it for the RCX, but because we are working on this bike first, the copper gasket will go into here. We have a exhaust gasket also. The exhaust gasket is like a paper gasket with a metal ring right here that will seal up nicely. Of course, I'm gonna take much more precautions to make the exhaust seal up nice and tidy. I'm gonna use exhaust paste on the gasket and on the copper washer and on the copper ring, so it seals up very perfectly, so we don't have a lot of leakage. If your cylinder is all black, that means you have a leakage. If everything is sealed up, there shouldn't be any blackness around your cylinder, and if you seal it up, it will stay nice and pretty and you don't have a dirty oily engine. Now, how this exhaust flange works, a normal exhaust flange on every other bike is just the exhaust flange and then the tube comes straight out of there. But with this exhaust, the tube goes inward a little bit. You have the copper gasket, then you have the plates right here for the exhaust, and the tube goes all the way over here to this inner ring. Now, what you can do if you want to make it nice and perfect, and this is something I thought of when I was working on it, you can actually grind away this lip right here. This is gonna take a lot of work. There's enough material, as I can see, around it to make this lip disappear, and what will happen then, you can make it flow. So what's now the problem, or not really a problem, but the exhaust port is this big, the inner circle. If you grind away this lip or making a smooth transition, you can make it flush with this ring right here. This will improve flow and whatever, and it will look cleaner if you have a bigger exhaust port. So you could do that. Also, there's another way to actually bypass this. When you make the flange, and this is what I should actually be doing right now, making the exhaust flange, putting a small tube in there that connects to here. Of course, you have the gasket and whatever, you have to calculate that, and then you can smoothen out the transition from the pipe and the exhaust port. As you can see, it's out of center. It is smaller right here, like 2 millimeters, and here it's almost 4, so it's a little bit out of center. So grinding away would be a better solution than putting the tube in there and grinding away the tube, so you have a better flowing exhaust, so you don't create turbulence or blockage or whatever. Me talking about blockage and all that stuff, it is, yeah, for a normal bike, it's not necessary. That's why companies don't really bother with it. The cylinder will perform as it should. But if you want to improve the performance of your bike, this is something that you can do. Keep in mind that all this stuff is like small little stuff. Will it have a big impact if you do this or not? Not really. If you're just doing this, it's not really worth it. But if you're doing other stuff like getting a better flow on your intake manifold, port job and whatever, all that stuff will build up to a decent amount of power and whatever. Don't be thinking, yeah, I didn't do this, I'm not gonna have power, or I just did this and I'm gonna have a lot of power. This is just, it's tedious stuff, but you can do it if you're just the way I am. I would love to remove this if I had more time, but of course, this is not my bike, and for what we are doing, I don't really want to take that time. If you are gonna install a bigger cylinder, I'm gonna do that for sure, but now on this bike, it doesn't really matter. So next up, I'm gonna work on this. I'm gonna smoothen out this part right here. As you can see, there's still a little bit of blackness, I mean right here. Also, I'm gonna clean up this port. As you can see, yeah, there's a little bit of stuff right here. I'm gonna file away that first so I have a clean port, and then I'm gonna get some sandpaper, not rough sandpaper, 500 or maybe 1000, with some lubricant, and make this all nice and smooth. Of course, you cannot glass polish this. I'm just gonna make it nice and pretty. And because this is gonna be a quick job, I'm also gonna do this a little bit better. As you can see, it's smooth enough, but I want it even smoother. So we're gonna work on this part right here. So yeah, let's just get started. So the intake port is done. There's just a little bit of filing that I needed to do. I also improved the flow a little bit. It was a little bit of a hiccup on one spot of the intake port. I filed it down, kept it rough, not really polished it, but yeah, now we have a nice flowing intake. Well, the top intake, the sides were pretty perfect as they were, but now all three of them are nice and perfect. I also worked on the top cylinder combustion chamber. As you saw, I started polishing it. I wasn't intended on doing this, but I couldn't help myself, so I got out the polishing machine and the polishing compound and polished it. But let's have a closer look of what I've done, and I will explain everything. So of course, what I told you guys, I surfaced the whole area, got it all nice and clean, so when we put on the new gasket and the new sealant, it will be nice and perfect. I could build a special tool for this to get it all nice and flat, but time is against me, so yeah, this should do. If we have the gasket and the sealant, it should be all nice and perfect. When you're mounting the gasket, you can have different sorts of gaskets. You can buy the stock one, or you can cut your own. The advantage with cutting your own gasket, you can get the right measurements. You got there's different thicknesses of gasket paper that you can buy, like 15 euros for like a meter or more. I don't know, it's been a long time since I bought one, but you can customize everything to get compression ratio good and the way you want it, but that is a whole other deal. But now let's take a look at the intake port. As I told you guys, I removed the stuff right here, so it's a nice flowing exhaust port. As you can see, it's all nice and clean now. But what you can see that I didn't really told was right here. There was a little bit of a bump right here. Even the corners were a little bit clogged up. So what I did, I got a file and I filed it like smooth. There's still a little bump in there, but it's not that big. So we can have a nice flow of mixture going inside of there, not creating too much turbulence. As I told you, with every single thing that I do, it is small stuff, but combining small stuff will get you some improvements. Also, I didn't smoothen this out. It could be polished, but people are saying when you polish this up, you remove those micro turbulences. That will cause harm, that your mixture will not completely mix with the air, or it's a better process to do to get that mixture. Personally, I would polish this, polish everything that I could do, make it all nice and clean. But yeah, I can see where they're coming from, and yeah, it's not that rough. If it was like casting, I would smooth it out a little bit, but yeah, this is like a little bit rough, like sandpaper material, so it doesn't really matter. But if you have bumps or whatever, you can still remove them and keep those turbulences still in your... This is what I did, so it looks nice and clean. The other ports look all nice and clean, no casting marks. What I also heard, I never done this myself, like you see these fins right here, and of course on the other side right here. Some people grind them down like knives, so there isn't turbulence from hitting this blunt spot. I've seen people online do this, so yeah, it is a possibility to sharpen this until it's like a knife. So when the mixture comes in, it doesn't hit right here. When I think about stuff like this, I think about a wind tunnel with a bicycle in there. Bicycle is like the same with tubes and whatever. It's all knife and whatever. So that is something that I want to share with you guys, that you can do this. But when we get to a stage that we have a bigger cylinder, I probably will do this, because yeah, if you have a bigger cylinder, why don't you go all the way with it? And yeah, do that. So that is the bottom cylinder. Now let's look at the top of the combustion chamber. As I told you guys, I sanded it a little bit and started polishing it. It's not a perfect polish. I mean, on these edges there's still some rough spots in there, but I mean, this whole part is polished. And now the reason that I do this is to prevent carbon buildup. Carbon will build up on places that it can attach to. Some people will say this is unnecessary, they will bring up the whole turbulence stuff and whatever. But when you think about it, from your carb to this part of your engine, there is a lot of stuff happening, and fuel doesn't go past here. It only compresses right here. Keeping this rough isn't really necessary. I first saw this on race cars back in the day. Of course, when you're doing this, you are removing the material, so making your expansion chamber bigger. That will affect the compression ratio. I mean, the material that you take off is so minimal that, yeah, if you tighten the bolts a little bit more, you will overcome this. Of course, this is not ideal. That's why I talked about the gasket material. You can get certain thicknesses of the gasket material. So when you take more out of this, you can compromise that with your gasket material. Use a little bit of thinner gasket material, so the piston will rise up a little bit higher and you have the same compression ratio or even bigger. Of course, dealing with compression ratio is really hard. I'm not gonna do that on this bike. We're turning it into racer, but not a competition racer. We just want to have fun with it. So next up, I'm gonna sand these surfaces right here. I'm gonna do this on glass. When you sand on glass, it is absolutely straight and perfect. Doing doing this on a mirror would be ideal, so you can see the imperfections of your mirror if you have a distorted image. But I'm just gonna do this on glass, so I have a clean surface right here and a flat surface on both sides of this. When we put the gasket in there, it will be all nice and flat, no leaks and whatever. So on these two sides right here, of course, you are taking down material. Keep that in mind. If you use like a rough grid, you will take down more material and you will increase your compression ratio. People might think, yeah, the higher compression ratio is better, make the cylinder almost hit the top. But what you get with that is you can get pre-ignition because of the compression. The mixture heats up and it backfires, and not backfire out of the exhaust, but before your piston hits top dead center, it will push it back, and yeah, you don't want that. Of course, with the gasket material, you can all coordinate this. We're not gonna worry about this. This is a stock cylinder. We're not gonna take off that much. Just keep in mind, you can do that. If you remove here and here, you can play with your compression ratio. I'm not smart enough to calculate all that. I have to look into that. So yeah, I'm gonna do that on this surface and the exhaust flange. Of course, not on the exhaust flange of the exhaust itself, but the connecting piece on the cylinder. Of course, when we get the exhaust, I'm also gonna do that there, and on the intake manifold, just to get a clean surface and whatever. But for now, I'm just gonna do this. So yeah, I'm gonna set everything up, give final explanation, and then just show you how I do it. So here is the setup that I'm gonna use. This is my lapping table. This is my welding table that I made, the TIG welding table. To make sure that this is completely flat, I did the same process that I'm gonna do with the parts right here. I laid some glass down with some sandpaper and moved it all around. So it was a long process, but I got it completely flat. Between the sandpaper and the table, there is a piece of glass on there. I cleaned it up with a razor blade, so it is nice and flat. We have some 500 grit sandpaper. I'm probably gonna go up until 2000, but this is the process that I'm gonna do. Now with this process, you can use either penetration oil or whatever, or water. I like to use oil because water will evaporate and the oil will stay a little bit more in place. This is gonna be a very long process. I'm not gonna time lapse it for every single stuff that I do. I'm just gonna do it and yeah, then show you the results. But I want to show you how I do it. The flat table, the glass and the sandpaper, clamp it down like this. I used to do it with tape, taped it down, but the paper will expand a little bit, so it will warp, and we don't want that. We want a really flat surface. I have to say there are special tables made for this with the diamond and whatever, but that is too expensive for the stuff that I do. It's the same process, just with sandpaper. It's pretty cheap to make, so you can do this yourself. So just spray some oil on there. What oil will do, it will help clog up of your sandpaper. Of course, we are working with aluminum. Aluminum is very tough on sandpaper. I mean, it clogs up really easy, but with the penetration oil, you can clean it off. Of course, your sandpaper will wear down, so you have to replace it. I'm gonna have to do 3 surfaces, so I'm gonna have to use 2 sheets of paper, and of course with the different gradients, 500, 1000 and 2000. I did this once before with the RCX, and what I found out is you don't have to put pressure on it. Actually, it's better to not put pressure on it. Just the weight of the part will be enough, because if you put pressure on there, you can maybe tilt it a little bit like this or like that, and you don't have an even surface. Of course, if you do it for a long time with the same pressure, you will have a flat looking surface, but it will not be flat. So just put the part on there flat and then just hit it a couple of times. Now the important part is to rotate it, and then just do the same and feel the part that it slides smoothly. Rotate it again. See that your part doesn't stick. Sometimes with the oil or whatever, it can stick a little bit. Try to prevent that. Just make it all nice and smooth. Just put your hands on there. This is a long process, as you can see. And then just do a final pass like this. Now let's clean it off just to show you guys. I use acetone to clean my parts. And Let's look at it. It looks already nicer, but we still have some scratches in there. When you look at where the holes are, it's not that completely flat. So that is what we are trying to take out, so we have a nice clean surface. And when you see that your sandpaper is filthy, just hit it a little bit with some and clean it off. Then you can continue the step. Don't do much with the harsh paper. Get it all nice and flat. And when you see like it's not gonna take a lot of time to get those final scratches out, you can switch over to the 1000 and whatever. Now I'm gonna do all the 3D surface with this grid and then just switch over. So let's have a final look. This is already a little bit sanded. This is gonna be a lot different when we finish up with it, and of course the exhaust port. So I'm just gonna crack on with it and hopefully it will be nice and smooth and you will see the result after. So both of the surfaces of the cylinders are sanded, even the exhaust flange is sanded, and it looks absolutely perfect. Now the cylinder head wasn't really a problem, it was fairly flat, but on the bottom cylinder there was a little bit of problem. Let's go take a closer look and I can explain everything. So this is the top, and as you can see it's nice and perfect, everything is flat. There are some little scratches still right here, but that shouldn't matter because this circle is all nice and smooth, so we can have a nice sealing combustion chamber, no leaks. Now when we look at the bottom half, it looks pretty nice, and that's because I made it pretty nice, because when I first started sanding it wasn't really that nice. You saw it before and it was really rough. This surface, there were some low spots right here and right here, so everything was grinding down here and also around here. The difference between the surfaces wasn't that big, but I could see still some discoloration right here and right here. So that indicated that we had some low spots. Now I got them completely out with the 350 and 500 grit sandpaper. The 1000 was really like a polishing or getting the most scratches out of there. But now it looks pretty nice. So when we're gonna combine these two halves with the gasket, we're gonna have a completely sealed engine or a combustion chamber. Now going to the exhaust port, this is a whole other deal and you will see what I mean with having low spots. This is the exhaust flange. It looks pretty nice, but as you can see, there is some scratches still right here. That means we have a low spot right here. It's just unnecessary to keep on sanding to get that completely out, because the surface, as I told you before, there is a copper washer right here, a gasket, and when we look at the circle right here, it is totally clean, so there won't be any problem sealing this up. I mean, we're gonna use 2 gaskets and some sealants, so we won't have any leaks. But it still looks nice. Even the inside looks pretty nice, and of course this part that we did. So this cylinder is 25 years old. Is that old? No, but having a resurfaced area and making everything flow is a good thing to do when you have the engine apart. Why not do the extra mile and get a nice clean cylinder? Now last week I said this. Now I'm pretty happy, but now comes even more stuff to put on there. I'm talking about the cylinder itself. I already test fitted the piston. It goes in, but it is a little tough to move around, so that means we're gonna have to do a break-in period, get a nice looped in there. And I got a response of somebody who told me, hey, you have to grind out or hone out the inside of the cylinder. A piston that doesn't move that well is gonna have some issues, and I completely understand what he's saying. This is a aluminum cylinder, so that means there is a hardened coating inside of here. When you have a cast iron cylinder, there is not, because the cast iron is harder than the aluminum. If there wasn't a coating right here, your cylinder would melt, but with that coating that is not the case. Also, he said when it's totally smooth, the oil doesn't get in there nicely. I know what he's saying, but the honing marks are still in there. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there are still some honing marks on there, a crisscross pattern that indicates that the cylinder wall is still good. The reason that I said that the piston was a little bit stuck, I maybe said it wrong. It's not that it's really stuck in there, it's just a snug fit, meaning that the piston is a correct size. It's not loose. It's not when I put it in there, it drops completely through it. It's a nice fit and it moves well. I checked the piston today, I put some oil on it and it slides in good enough, so I don't have a worry about that. But I get the concern of the guy saying that I have to hone it out so I can have a better flowing piston. Keep in mind, we just bought the piston, not the cylinder. When you order complete kits, it's like a quality control that they do. Put the piston in there so it has a snug fit. Of course, when you buy a separate part, things can be a little bit tighter or looser, but I'd rather have it more tighter than looser. So when we install the cylinder with the piston and everything, I'm going to be very careful to see that everything rotates good, that it has enough oil. Of course, when we start the bike up first, we're going to put in fuel that's more rich in oil. So we have a good lubrication for the first few steps. We have the break-in period, of course, with the new piston, but installing the piston is going to be for next week. But I'm pretty happy with the progress right now. I'm happy how the cylinder looks and how it's gonna fit. This is something that I recommend when you're taking apart an engine. Go the extra mile to make it seal better. So yeah. So next time we're gonna reinstall the piston and the cylinder, making sure that it all works correctly. And of course, we're gonna have to trim the gaskets on the crankcase, get that completely clean so we have a good flowing engine, no obstructions of gaskets and whatever that can cause any problems with the bearings. So that is gonna be it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Be sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter and on Instagram. And if you are not already subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one.